A newly married couple finds themselves suddenly tasked with caring for a paralyzed child, questioning their readiness for such a responsibility. One day, while their 5-month-old baby sleeps, their puppy, Max, performs an act so incredible that they are moved to tears, declaring it a miracle. The peacefulness of their afternoon is abruptly broken by the loud, persistent ringing of the doorbell. Chris, deeply immersed in his coding, initially barely registers the sound of the doorbell. His wife, Emma, recently back from her nursing shift and eager for the calm of their new home on Maple Street, remains unaware of the noise. After the doorbell rings several more times, Chris is reluctantly pulled from his desk. Opening the door, he is confronted with a scene that disrupts his daily routine. A distressed young woman stands on their doorstep, clutching a swaddled baby. Her unkempt look and the desperate urgency in her eyes clearly indicate that their structured, active lives are about to be disrupted. Chris was taken aback. He had no clue who this woman was or where she had come from. She looked exhausted and weary, as if deprived of sleep and food for days. As she stepped forward, she said, "My name is Elena, and I can't do this alone anymore." Chris felt a pang of sympathy for her, yet he was primarily curious about why she was at his doorstep. He suspected she might need food, something he was prepared to offer, but her next words left him speechless. "Please," she pleaded through tears, "I can't take care of him anymore. He's yours now." Chris was stunned, trying to make sense of her words. The baby, wrapped in a faded blue blanket, made soft cooing sounds. Suddenly, the woman pushed the baby into Chris' arms, handed him a crumpled letter, and rushed off before he could respond. The incident was so abrupt that Chris stood frozen, gazing down at the baby in his arms, overwhelmed by shock. Then Chris snapped back to reality. "Wait!" he shouted, but it was too late. The woman was quickly walking away. Chris considered chasing after her, but she seemed to vanish around a corner, and he couldn't exactly sprint through the streets while holding a baby. His heart pounded as he looked down at the sleeping infant, his emotions a whirlwind of confusion and apprehension. Emma arrived just moments later, her eyes widening in astonishment at the sight of her husband on the doorstep with a baby. "Chris, what?" Her mind raced to bizarre conclusions. Initially, she suspected Chris had been unfaithful. For what other reason would he suddenly have a child? However, that suspicion quickly dissipated. She trusted her husband and knew there must be an explanation. Without a word, Chris handed her the crumpled letter. They read it together, their faces growing increasingly grave with each line. The letter revealed that the woman, unable to provide for her child, believed he would be safe with the Millers. She had chosen them specifically because she knew of Emma's profession as a nurse, someone she deemed capable of providing the necessary care for her baby. The woman had delivered her child 3 months earlier. With no family support and the child's father leaving upon learning of the baby's paralysis from the waist down, she faced immense isolation. Her community unjustly blamed her, treating her as if she were morally at fault for her child's condition. Overwhelmed and incapable of meeting her baby's needs, she reached her breaking point. In the letter, through tears, she confessed her need to take time for herself. While deeply sorry for her decision, she expressed her trust that Chris and Emma could offer the care and love her child desperately needed. She mentioned having seen Emma at the hospital during her labor and was moved by her kindness, prompting her to entrust her child to them. Alongside the letter was a legal document granting Chris and Emma custody of the baby, but the woman hadn't included the birth certificate, leaving her identity a mystery. The couple exchanged bewildered glances before rereading the letter, confirming the reality of their sudden situation. Once it sank in, Emma's nurturing instincts surged forth. She took the baby inside, soothing him with tender whispers. Despite their initial shock and uncertainty, their innate compassion drove them to act. As inherently caring people, they were determined not to let this child suffer. The baby, now completely reliant on them, became their unexpected blessing, and they pledged to provide all the care and love he needed. As the weeks unfolded, the Millers smoothly transitioned into their new roles as parents, embracing the challenges and joys of their unforeseen journey. They named the baby Samuel and quickly grew to love him deeply. The initial period was challenging. Samuel required immediate medical assessments to evaluate his health and understand his condition. The uncertainty of how his paralysis might affect his potential for a full life weighed heavily on them. Emma decided to take a few weeks off from her job to care for Samuel, utilizing her remaining vacation days. The hospital was accommodating about maternity leave, which eased their situation considerably. Their anxiety was somewhat alleviated when they learned that despite his paralysis, Samuel would be able to lead a fulfilling life. He wouldn't have use of the lower part of his body, but the potential for him to become independent was promising. Adapting to sleepless nights and constant diaper changes, they embraced their new routine. After settling into their new life with Samuel, Emma and Chris contacted their attorney to explain the unexpected turn of events and discuss the next steps. They needed advice on how to proceed. Their attorney took a few days and later informed them that since efforts to locate Samuel's birth mother were unsuccessful, they were clear to formally adopt him. They already had a signed agreement from her, which meant the adoption could go forward without any legal challenges. Emma, always compassionate, readily agreed to the adoption. Despite her empathy for the birth mother's plight, Emma harbored a quiet hope that she might one day return to see her son. Life, however, had to continue. Unbeknownst to them, another unexpected twist was just around the corner. Amid settling into their new routine, Emma encountered another surprise. One chilly morning, she found a small, scruffy puppy in their backyard. The puppy's fur was tangled and dirty, and it appeared both lost and frightened. Emma didn't hesitate. She wrapped the shivering puppy in her arms and brought it into the warmth of their home. Chris was initially reluctant, concerned about the additional responsibility, but Emma's resolve convinced him to support her decision. They agreed to take the puppy to the vet for a checkup. At the vet's office, it was confirmed that the puppy was a stray without any form of identification. Other than a minor illness, the vet declared the puppy healthy. However, they noticed that the puppy, whom they named Max, was cautious around other people. Max seemed to trust Emma almost immediately, but was notably wary of Chris. Additionally, Max displayed restlessness whenever Emma attended to Samuel, a concerning sign for the couple. Chris, feeling the strain of the situation, initially thought it might be best to rehome Max since his unpredictable behavior posed a risk to Samuel. However, a few days later, Chris decided to give Max another chance to adapt by taking him on morning walks. This extra time together allowed Chris and Max to bond, and gradually, Max began to warm up to him. This led the couple to hope that Max would eventually get used to Samuel as well. Their lives became a flurry of activities. Emma balanced her intense hospital job with the demands of late-night feedings and changing diapers. Chris altered his work hours to contribute more at home. They found themselves delicately managing work, household duties, and the care of both Samuel and Max. Max, especially, seemed to need more affection than he had previously received. Meanwhile, Samuel required extra attention to ensure he got adequate exercise for his legs. Although Emma's and Chris' families were supportive, their packed schedules limited how often they could assist. When they did visit, Max would growl and bark at them sharply. It was clear that Max was fiercely protective of his new home, signaling that outsiders were not welcome. Amid the chaos, a deep sense of joy persisted. Samuel's hearty giggles and Max's amusing tricks brightened their days. Their home overflowed with love, even during the busiest times. Yet the trials were ongoing. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, Emma discovered that Samuel had developed a fever. When it didn't decrease after a few hours, they were gripped by fear and hurried him to the hospital. Amid this crisis, there was a glimmer of hope. Following numerous tests, the doctors approached them in the waiting room with surprising news. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thank you so much. They revealed that Samuel was diagnosed with a rare condition that temporarily paralyzed his legs, indicating a possibility that he might walk again. The couple was ecstatic. What a miracle! Regrettably, the doctors couldn't specify when recovery might occur, but encouraged them to remain optimistic and hopeful. They also provided guidance on how to care for Samuel, who was prone to infections. Emma shared their caregiving efforts thus far. The doctor commended their dedication. He scheduled a follow-up appointment for 2 months later, hopeful for positive developments by then. Samuel's situation required relentless attention and specialized care. Emma and Chris took turns staying home to look after him, their hearts heavy as they observed their son's challenges. They clung to the hope that a breakthrough would arrive soon. Sensing his family's distress, Max remained close to Samuel, his faithful presence bringing solace. One evening, completely worn out, Chris dozed off on the sofa while Emma was out on errands. The baby monitor next to him on the coffee table hummed quietly, vigilantly overseeing Samuel in his crib. Max lay by Chris' feet, his ears perked, attentive to any disturbance. Despite his initial reluctance, Max had grown fond of Samuel, and they had become nearly inseparable. It appeared that Max understood Samuel needed extra protection and had taken on the role of his guardian. Suddenly, a soft thud startled Max awake. He sprinted to Samuel's room, driven by his protective instincts. The baby had slipped through the crib's vertical slats during his sleep and was now precariously hanging off the side, his head pressed against the floor. Samuel was in a critical position, his head struggling to support his body in a very dangerous situation. Given his paralysis in the lower limbs, he couldn't wriggle back into the crib on his own. His neck and head could not bear his weight much longer, and he was moments away from potentially falling to the floor, which could have been fatal due to the angle at which he was suspended. Just then, the puppy seemed to grasp the severity of the moment. He moved close to Samuel and carefully nudged him with his nose, using his body to try to lift him back into safety. As Max struggled to protect Samuel, his whines woke Chris, who quickly rushed into the nursery. The scene that unfolded before Chris was heartwarming. He arrived just in time to see Max's final push that helped Samuel safely back into the crib. Chris hurried over as Max stood guard by the crib. With Samuel now safely lying down, his tiny hands entwined in the puppy's fur. Tears formed in Chris' eyes as he recognized the profound connection between Max and Samuel. When Emma returned home, she found Chris and Samuel sleeping in the nursery, with Max snuggled up beside them. She silently joined them, her heart brimming with thankfulness for their small family. Despite the hurdles, they had one another, and that was sufficient. As days melded into weeks, Samuel's condition gradually improved. The temporary paralysis began to fade, and he started to regain movement in his legs. The Millers were ecstatic, their hearts filled with hope for what lay ahead. Juggling work, parenting, and caring for Max became more manageable as they established a routine. Samuel continued to thrive, his laughter and smiles lighting up their lives. Max, ever loyal, stayed constantly by Samuel's side. On one sunny afternoon, the family enjoyed a picnic in the backyard. Now an energetic toddler, Samuel ran around the lawn chasing Max, his joyful laughter echoing around them. Emma and Chris, their faces painted with smiles, watched contentedly as Samuel and Max played. In that moment, They understood that the circumstances that brought Samuel into their lives had been a hidden blessing. They had grown into a family, forged by love and toughened by the challenges they had endured together. Yet another unexpected moment was about to unfold. A few days later, the doorbell echoed through their home. Max, ever alert, rushed to the door with a giggling Samuel toddling after him. Chris, closest to the door, hesitated for a moment before opening it. His face turned pale at the sight of the visitor. It was Samuel's birth mother. He called out for Emma with urgency. When Emma saw the expression on Chris' face and the woman standing at their doorstep, she immediately guessed who it was. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, her heart sinking with the fear that she had come to take Samuel back. Emma, however, managed to compose herself enough to step aside, allowing the woman and her partner to enter, but the woman remained outside. Instead, she handed Chris some documents and turned to leave. Among these was a letter, reminiscent of the one they received previously. In it, Elena, the woman, wrote that she had sought the necessary help and was now in a stable mental state. Elena expressed her apologies once more and conveyed her wishes for happiness and love to Emma and Chris. She clarified that the decision to inform Samuel about her was entirely theirs. Elena affirmed that she would never challenge their custody, as she had come to terms with her choice. She was getting married and aiming to move forward from this chapter in her life. Emma felt that Eleanor's words carried a hint of self-interest, but she withheld judgment. She recognized that the experiences Eleanor endured, both in losing Samuel and facing societal backlash, could have been deeply traumatic. Emma harbored a desire to share the news that Samuel's paralysis had resolved, yet she understood that the moment to do so had passed, and it was time to look ahead. Emma's smile broadened as she thought about the additional wonderful news she had yet to share with Chris. She was 8 weeks pregnant, another miraculous addition to their growing family. As they looked forward, the Millers felt fortified by their experiences, confident that they could handle any challenges that came their way. Their journey had underscored the vital importance of resilience, love, and the unbreakable bonds of family. They treasured each moment with Samuel, thankful for his regained health and continued happiness. Max, too, remained an indispensable part of their lives, his playful spirit and steadfast loyalty continually bringing them joy. The friendship between Max and Samuel only strengthened, blossoming into a lifelong bond that promised to endure through the years. With their hearts brimming with hope and gratitude, the Millers moved forward, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. Did you enjoy this story? Do you think children and dogs can coexist harmoniously? Can a dog truly save a life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the story, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving us a like. What a heartwarming tale. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.